So I have started to record. So welcome to a webinar that has seems to have been a long time coming. I offered to give the webinar a few weeks ago, but it just wasn't time to do it before now, I'm afraid. So I just want to explain, and I'm afraid I've got headphones on, but if you can hear rain, it's because I am sat in the wheelhouse of our boat and it is windows all round and it is raining outside. So I'm hoping that that doesn't come through and that the sound quality is okay. So just to explain a little bit and introduce myself. So I've called this FasterEFT Safety Concerns based on the group that was set up by, I think her name is Stephanie Smith, and by Diana Cottle. It seemed appropriate that, as I had offered to address and put what I thought and share what I thought, that it reflected the fact that I'd been invited into the group to do so. So just to outline for everybody the purpose of this webinar, okay? So as I'll explain it shortly, I was trained in FasterEFT. It was a few years ago, and Robert has suggested that there has been a lot of changes since then, which obviously I can't speak for because I'm not recently trained in it. However, some of the recent complaints did seem to be still about the same things that I had concerns over, so that is why I feel it's still appropriate to share my view on the subject. But I think with the escalating argument going on in the public, I chose not to type up my thoughts and my contribution, partly because I find it easier to talk about what I feel, and I didn't really have the time to do it. It was the main reason. So I wanted to clarify my own position, having made comments in the past about FasterEFT, and I thought it was appropriate now for me, based on what's going on at the moment, to clarify some of the things I've said in the past and my position that I've taken on FasterEFT. But I kind of wanted to address the fact that there were a number of different complaints, and I felt that some of these were getting more personal than professional, let's say. And there seemed to be very polarized public argument going on. So I think there are areas for improvement, and obviously I'm going to talk about that. And I think there are areas for professional development all round, including myself and everybody involved in this argument. So I do want to make it very, very clear that this is not a platform for people to thrash out an argument. There are clearly platforms, people are doing that already. I don't take sides with anybody. I'm not siding and defending or representing Robert Smith, nor have I ever offered to defend or represent people that feel that they have been traumatized by some of the techniques or practices of FasterEFT. And I do want to clarify that I was invited to the FasterEFT Safety Concerns group, and I offered to make a webinar of my thoughts and feelings about the subject. And not at any point did I offer to represent anybody, did I offer an environment where people could enter into a public forum to discuss anything. So when Robert Smith contacted me and asked, would somebody from FasterEFT or himself be invited, I of course said, well, you can listen in if you like, because it's just my opinion, and obviously I can't imagine how he wasn't going to hear about it anyway. Nobody is invited to talk in the webinar. It is my opinion, and you are invited to pose questions or to give comment, but this is not a forum for discussion or to parade people's concerns in front of the FasterEFT community. So the fact that my offer may have been misunderstood or misconstrued, which led to some interesting reactions from the FasterEFT safety concerns community, of their own community, I'd just like to say at this point that not at any stage was I offended or took anything personally when I was removed from the group or my comments removed. I'm outside of this argument, and I'm glad to remain outside of the argument. So I just want to clarify the comments that were made about me taking things personally. And I promised my dear friend and colleague, Caroline Rowling, that she wouldn't be dragged into this presentation, which is my personal view. But she has agreed that I can say that she was with me at the time when those particular messages came through, and was a witness to my very unupset and unemotional reaction to the situation. So, but I will say that I have had in the past a personal reaction to my interaction with Robert Smith and FasterEFT, and that is something that I am taking this opportunity to clarify. So I am merely voicing my opinion. My opinion is my own, and as I have added, it does not represent anybody else that I work alongside with or I'm affiliated with. So it is my personal opinion based on my experience of FasterEFT and of Robert, and of the other studies and areas that I'm an expert in, and I'm attempting to address how I feel there are problems in working with people with severe trauma. Okay, so it's my personal opinion. What is my vested interest? Well, my interest is in seeing something that everybody's working towards, which is helping people and helping people to help themselves, to empower people, seeing that all of this kind of argument and public arguing is not doing anybody any favors. And I think, and I will talk about why I think that's happening. I will talk about why that mechanism has been brought into play. But I feel that for me personally, this is the best way for me to voice my opinion and be able to explain myself more clearly. And that this will then stand as a public record of my opinion, and it can't be misconstrued or misrepresented in any way, because I feel I'll feel I will have explained myself properly. Okay, so that is why I'm doing it. That is what I offered from the start to anybody that was interested or wishes to listen to my opinion. If you're not interested in my opinion, then you don't have to listen to it, and that's also fine. I'm not anybody important. I'm not anybody special. I just have an opinion, and having made comment in the past and having had my opinion invited, people ask me what are my thoughts, I felt this was the most appropriate way to share it without getting caught up in either side of the argument, and being able to voice what I think. Okay, so why do I feel I should share my opinion? So who am I and what do I know? When I went to train in level 1 and 2 FasterEFT, I was one of the last people that trained in it as they were run together. So I do appreciate that there was a recognition that they needed to be split into 2 longer trainings. But I am trained. I'm no longer an AMET trainer because I chose not to renew my status as a trainer. But I am trained as an AMET EFT trainer and an AMT trainer. And I'm also trained, I'm a master of NLP and clinical hypnotherapy. My specialist area that I'm more well known for is the kind of body-mind connection, so the somatic psychology. And I'm trained as a Meta Health master trainer, and I'm also trained in German New Medicine. And my own kind of representation and version of that is conscious root cause analysis. And that's about developing a conscious awareness of the signs and symptoms of the body, and how that connects with our thoughts and past traumas and experiences. Some of you may know I am recently just back from Bosnia, where I've been working with my friend and colleague Caroline Rowling. together with her, we're specialists in working with post-traumatic stress disorder and severe trauma, and we are directors of the Community Resilience Network, CIC, which is a company that we've set up, a not-for-profit organisation, or an NGO, non-government organisation, created to enable us to work with people with PTSD and severe trauma in different places in the world, as well as the UK. And it also enables us to raise money to do that. I'm also author of Meta Messages from Your Body, based on the somatic psychology that I mentioned a moment ago. But I'm also an advanced practitioner in a whole list of other areas, and I don't have time to go into all of them now, but suffice to say they range from more somatic body therapies like Reiki, quantum touch, Qigong, through to more energy-based energy therapies, and even psychological based. So I'm kind of broadly read, and my work more recently involves looking at trauma specialists and training in working with severe trauma. So looking at the work of Babette Rothschild and Dr. Robert Scare, Dr. Stephen Porges, Peter Levine, and those sorts of people who are specifically experts in trauma. So my observation of the situation with FasterEFT is based on my personal experience, my need to work through my own personal triggers with what I was seeing going on and what that meant to me, and then what I've been able to observe since that has happened, since I was able to let go, and then this issue has arisen in the public forum as a result of other people's experience. So I really am trying to look at the situation kind of more generally, more globally, let's say, with a view to trying to address the view from both sides. Let's say, let's look at what is working and what isn't working, and look at what may be done, or maybe where people's attentions might be best served, rather than this kind of public argument that is continuing to go on. So I did promise that I would address all of the things that came up, and all of the complaints, and all of the statements that I had been sort of witness to, or that people had shared with me. So I've kind of narrowed it down into these four groups. I think one of the big arguments that's going on at the moment is FasterEFT a development of EFT? There are specific safety concerns over the use of FasterEFT when working with severe trauma. There seem to be rather a lot of personal comments and complaints about Robert Smith himself. And then there are other related complaints and comments about what I'm using someone else's phrase here, that something that stuck with me, which is the Church of Robert Smith and FasterEFT business model. Now, I'm going to address all four of these in order, after I've pre-framed some understanding that I'd like to share. But I am going to start by just kind of working backwards from these first. I think it's very dangerous to get into making comments about things that are not related to the key issues about people's personal experiences in experiencing either re-traumatization or re-triggering during a technique. I think I've heard comments about Robert Smith's business model from individuals, and also actually from Gary Craig. And I want to say now that I don't think this is something that needs to be dragged into the argument. If there are safety issues to be addressed or ethical issues to be addressed, I think the focus should stay on that. If people don't like Robert's business model, then that's just them not liking his business model. I don't think it is relevant to the argument about whether certain specific aspects of the techniques work. So, what Robert chooses to charge for his individual therapies is up to him. and whatever is reasoned up to him. If people want to pay that and they choose to pay that, then that's also up to them. But I can say from a lot of study in this area and a lot of training in this area that Robert has a reasonably generally accepted business model, in that he is tiering what he offers, and he gives away a lot, which is what is recommended. He then has his basic model about, which is his training that he sells. He then has his higher tier stuff that he prices higher, and then he has his what you call the elite stuff. That's a standard business model. Okay, so if people don't like the business model, I think we need to start to define what it is that we are really unhappy about. And so personally, I don't think this is something that should be entered into the concerns about whether people are traumatized or re-traumatized. I think it's a different thing. I think it's a different argument. But just for the record, my observation, and again, this whole webinar is about my personal observation, is Robert Smith has a fairly standardized, acceptable business model, and he is, doing what many other people do by tiering what he offers. In terms of the expression, the Church of Robert Smith, I do come on later to how people are entering into kind of working with Robert and following Robert and training with Robert. So I won't go too much into that now, other than say that, Robert cannot operate alone. If people choose to follow him or choose to admire him or choose to emulate or copy him or model him, I don't think he can be blamed for that. Okay, so maybe there is a bigger picture to look at, and I do address that in another slide or a little bit later. But I think, again, we need to be careful about what is it we're actually complaining about, and what is the point of our complaint. What is the point about what we are trying to, what is it we're trying to do? What is it we're trying to change? And what is it we're trying to make happen? I do come on, I go through these in order. I do come on to the personal comments and complaints about Robert, and I think there is a bit of a fuzzy area around the belief system and the techniques in FasterEFT, because of course they are based on Robert's structure of FasterEFT. So I look at that one and I look at the other two. As we go through this webinar, I address these all in turn. But in order to do that and feel that I'm explaining myself properly, I do want to explain what I believe is what I believe is important to understand if we're going to be able to assess whether FasterEFT is dangerous to work with people with trauma, severe trauma, or not. What is my aim for this? Okay, so I want to outline my aim. I think there needs to be a level of transparency. And when I say transparency, I mean looking at what it is that we individually want to get out of this. If we are against EFT, what is it you're aiming to get out of it? And if you are for EFT, what is it you want to get out of it? And kind of being blind to the other side of the argument, I think, is not extending a level of transparency about the fact that this argument is now in the public domain, and therefore something needs to happen. So I would like to see a level of transparency and communication between the different parties. I think there needs to be an address of what is exactly ethical practice and ethical conduct, and how do you structure that, how do you instill it, and how do you monitor it. And I think one of the problems that has arisen is based on validation and acknowledgement and respect for people. I come on later to different strategies and different types of behavior, and people only become aggressive if they feel that their position is not being understood, that they're not being acknowledged or respected or not being validated. So I think there needs to be a recognition and a validation from both sides that in order to be able to actually move on. And in doing so, an acceptance of responsibility. And I'm deliberately saying both sides here because I think it's time for everybody to sort of step back and to start to look at what is the energy we're bringing to the pot here? What is the energy that we're putting into this situation? Whether it's we feel we're acting on our own behalf to protect ourselves or on the behalf of other people, I think I've seen energy from both sides in very defensive and very aggressive behavior, and I think I'll comment on that again in a while. And I also think that if we're to move on, there needs to be some sort of grievance procedure. Now, admittedly, if there's no acceptance and validation of the problem or acceptance of responsibility, then there's not going to be any grievance procedure put in place. So this is kind of forward thinking. This is me wondering if it's possible that that we can focus on what the problems are and look at how those problems are addressed, so that the people that are unhappy feel that they have been listened to, and at the same time, the people that maybe need to address some of the practices have some practical acknowledgement about what it is in particular that is going wrong. Because at the moment, I don't think there's any address of any practical look at what's going on or going wrong. So I'm just checking against or for EFT or FasterEFT. Okay, so I have to just now look at some of the questions and see. Okay, so I've got some nice comments here. It seems everyone can hear me. So just to let you know, I can see your comments if you put them in. But I have to do this. I have to kind of go to it, look at it, and then actually kind of go through them. So I'm sorry if that takes away from my ability to actually look at the slides and go through the slides as well. Okay, so before we can go anywhere, before we can assess if there is anything that needs changing or addressing, or we start to address the complaints, we need to look at the argument of, is FasterEFT unsafe? And we can't do that unless we look at what safety is and safety working with trauma. Okay, so I've literally just looked at the Oxford English Dictionary definition of these words. Okay, so safety is the condition of being protected from or unlikely to cause danger, risk, or injury. And what I want to do is I want to bring this up now, flag this up now, so that as I go through the slides, we can start to look at whether we feel, how this carries through the things that I talk about. Okay. So that is what safety is. So if we're addressing whether some of the techniques from FasterEFT are safe, and safe in particular to work with people with severe trauma, the concept of safety is the condition of being protected from or unlikely to cause danger, risk, or injury. Okay. Now, people have suggested that there is an ethical issue in the safety issue, and that what is missing from FasterEFT is a sound ethics. So I looked up what ethics is, and it is the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. So in order to make sense of that, we have to look at what moral means. And moral is the standards of behavior and principles of right and wrong. So we have to assume or presuppose that in order to be able to put ethical and safe structures in place, that we have the ability to recognize right from wrong, and the ability to, in understanding morals and standards of behavior and the principles of right and wrong, be able to use that to govern our behavior and the conducting of an activity, as such to protect people from the unlikelihood of causing them danger, risk, or injury. Okay, so you can see how I'm just looking at that in place and seeing how that then carries through to the argument. So, staying with safety. Okay, I want to outline for people what it means to be safe when working with trauma. Okay, and this comes from my own practice and my own experience, and this comes in particular from my experience working with severe trauma and PTSD in Bosnia. And I'm not going to go into that at the moment, but what I can say is that we are working with very severe, very long-term and repeated severe trauma. So we work with the concept that we're born for survival and growth. Okay, we are born to survive. We are actually animals on this planet. We're mammals, and we have an innate ability to survive. And we do actually have the ability to process trauma and to grow from our experiences. Okay, and there are reasons we don't always do that, but we are born to survive and to grow. Now, when we have a trauma, it is hardwired in our physiology. So in our neural pathways, we are hardwired to respond to that which causes us unsafety and is a threat to survival. And our physiology is wired, not just the way we perceive the world, but it is actually our body-mind connection is more than a connection, it's actually one in the same thing. So our emotions, our psychology, and our physiology are hardwired to respond to that which is not safe for us. And because we're primed for survival, we need to survive before we can grow and we can repair and we can, as Maslow puts it, self-actualize. I'm not going to grow and I'm not going to self-actualize to realize any higher level of myself if I'm under threat. So I'm primed to survive first. And this is Bruce Lipton talks a lot about this, and this is the basic hierarchy of needs that Maslow talks about. This is not new information. Okay, we need to be safe, and we need a number of other things first in order to be able to grow. Now, we all develop strategies for survival. Okay, we are, from early on, we are conditioned and predisposed to the way we perceive safety. And we are all deeply and innately geared to develop survival strategies. Okay, now we will not let go of a survival strategy unless it's safe to do so. And this is something I want you to remember. It is not in our interest at any level to let go of a survival strategy that is something that works for me, that keeps me safe on any level, unless it is safe for me to do so. So if we are triggered into a survival response and we're in fight flight, we are not fully facilitated to think or reason. We are not in a position to do anything other than act on the fight, flight, freeze response if we're triggered. Now, this is particularly relevant when I come to talk about some of the techniques in FasterEFT. So I want you to remember that unless we feel safe to do so, we cannot and do not let go of a survival strategy. What we will do is we will adopt another one, which I will talk about in a short while. But we don't, for survival reasons, we don't let go of a strategy that serves us. Okay, we may appear to in order to create a level of safety in the situation, but we will hold on to it. Okay, and there are reasons for that. So, so something that needs to be borne in mind is that different people are predisposed to perceptions of danger from their early conditioning and their early age, whether this is something that happens in the womb and pre-birth, or something that happens in the first 6 or 7 years of their life. But we are hardwired to survive. Now, although we're all designed to process trauma, different people have different abilities to do that, depending on different factors. It could be that early conditioning in what we perceive to be a threat. It could be on current survival needs or needs of the future. So there needs to be an ecology to the changes that I make. It may be safe right now, but when I go home, for example, it may not be safe. So that means that those changes are not really in place, because I'm geared to be able to prepare myself for future events. So, and also the amount and the load of trauma, either very severe trauma, repeated or prolonged traumatic experiences, give us create a different situation in us, in our ability to process and let go of trauma. And all of these things need to be borne in mind when we are working with people for dealing with severe trauma. Okay. So I want to put that in place before I go into answering some of the main arguments. And the arguments, it is confusing because they are kind of intertwined. And much as I want to sort of stay out of making personal comments about Robert, I do think sometimes there are some personal kind of personality traits which do create some confusion. And I do think that there are some crossovers between the practices and the belief systems, but I'm going to aim as much as possible to kind of put my cards on the table and say what I believe about the situation, why I believe it, and why I feel, why I have my opinion on certain arguments. So if the first argument, and there is obviously the current videos with Gary Craig at the moment, if one of the first arguments is that is FasterEFT a development of EFT? So I'm going to explain why I think it's not. Okay. In order to do that, we need to understand just a little bit about EFT. So we know that, or you may or may not know, and I am aware that there are people in this who maybe don't know a lot of the background of this. EFT it stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, and it is the name given to a meridian tapping technique developed by Gary Craig. He was inspired to develop it and kind of simplify a technique sort of discovered, if you like, by Roger Callahan. And yes, I know there is an argument about the origins before Callahan and the choices technique and other people that have been involved early on in the discovery. Whether other people were party to those discoveries or not, or had their own discoveries, doesn't change the fact that Gary Craig did come up with the title Emotional Freedom Techniques. And what is significant about this, that I think is key to this particular argument, is that Gary Craig developed an understanding. He came from an NLP background, so he was, I believe he was a trainer of neuro-linguistic programming, but he developed an understanding of the meridian system as understood not just by the Chinese, but by the Indians and other cultures, but mostly recognized in the West as something that the Chinese have been documenting. And this meridian system is the foundation of acupuncture, acupressure, and a number of other techniques. And it is the research and documentation of an energetic system within the body. Now, it's not the only energetic system, but it is one that there has now been sound research on. And it is one that Gary recognized the work of Roger Callahan and understood that in tapping these meridian points, we actually are tuning in to the energy system of the body, and that in doing so, we can help to release and process information stored in the body. Now, I know that Gary Craig continues to do his research and develop his techniques. So when I took the EFT training, and I believe that and I know there are some people on this call that were in the training that I took, and I've seen some familiar names who were there when I was there. I'm the person who argued with Robert Smith about the way he spoke to some people when they were questioning him. I'm the person that is on the video for doing that. I'm also the person that challenged his understanding of the meridian system. Now, Robert Smith does not seem to understand what the meridian system is. And because of this, I don't feel that FasterEFT can be a development of EFT. So let me qualify this. Robert Smith teaches that the meridian system is a series of connections from the brain to each of the organs. Now, this is technically and fundamentally incorrect. Now, I don't know whether he's changed his teaching, but I did speak to him for a period of time after my training in an attempt to try to assist him understanding this, and he chose not to accept it or understand it. When I challenged him in the training, and I explained that the meridians do not run from the brain to the organs. They are actually a system, a kind of circuit from organ to organ in a kind of a body clock system. And that is why we get the meridian body clock, because of that circuit. The meridians run up and down the front and the back of the body, up and down the legs, up and down the arms, connected to each other in a full flowing circuit. When I tried to explain this, Robert said that he chose his belief system and he adopted a belief system that served him best, and he would only change that when a better belief came along, which is fair enough. We all do that, okay? When I pointed out that he was kind of out of alignment with what is kind of universally accepted as a concept of the meridian system, as explored and documented in particular by the Chinese, he kind of laughed and joked it off by saying, well, maybe the Chinese got it wrong. Now, he did look a bit sheepish afterwards, and I do understand what he was trying to do, but it did strike me at the time that Robert doesn't seem to be able to extend his understanding of something that he has already made a decision on, and this becomes relevant a bit later. Okay, so Robert is technically incorrect on what the meridian system is. So I can only guess and only sort of surmise that when Robert initially saw Gary Craig doing his presentations, Robert maybe had some understanding of NLP, and what he thought he saw when Gary Craig was tapping while talking with clients and doing his demonstrations was that as he tapped, he was doing what is known in NLP as a pattern interrupt. So Robert flatly rejects the concept of the energy system and seems almost afraid to talk about that. And in the training was actually telling people not to talk about the energy system because people would think it was woo-woo, and considers his development of EFT and in his improvement of EFT by cutting out that energy stuff. Now, this is like saying, I've seen somebody selling pumpkin soup. People seem to want pumpkin soup, and I like that. And I like the fact that they want it, and I like the fact that they like it, and it seems to be good for them. Only I don't get pumpkins, and I don't like pumpkins. And when I talk about pumpkins when I'm at home, people think I'm a bit mad. So I'm probably going to leave pumpkins out of my pumpkin soup, and I'm just going to make, cabbage soup. But people seem to be interested in pumpkin soup, so I'm going to still call it pumpkin soup. And that's what I'm going to sell. But at some point, I am going to tell them that it isn't pumpkin soup, but I'm going to just make sure that I kind of connect with those people first before I tell them that actually what I've got isn't pumpkin soup because I'm too frightened of pumpkins and I don't want to put them in my soup. And I'm actually giving them cabbage soup. Okay. So Robert feels that he's improved on EFT by editing out anything to do with the energy system and the meridian system. Now, for me, what this does is it poses a number of ethical questions and it poses a number of safety questions. There is an argument from some people in the FasterEFT community that there is another therapy called emotionally focused therapy, and that, Gary Craig isn't complaining about that and he's not saying anything about that. Well, the reason that's a moot point, and it's not really even worth arguing, is that nobody from emotionally focused therapy is going around the EFT, emotional freedom techniques circuit, selling EFT, emotional focused therapy. It is only FasterEFT that began its journey with suggesting it was faster EFT, and then I think probably in realizing there was a slight breach of copyright, decided that, oops, we can't call it faster EFT, so we will call it faster emotionally focused transformation. There is a fundamental ethical issue with this, in that, like myself, and I'm no mug, but I saw Robert at an EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques event, demonstrating faster EFT and demonstrating that he had some new and wonderful techniques. And so I bought in, and I went along keen to understand more EFT techniques in how to work with the energetic system and the meridian system, because I liked the way that worked and I liked what I'd been learning. To find during the training, after I paid my money, that this was nothing to do with the meridian system. And not only that, but that there were slightly sarcastic and snide comments about those people that work with energy. So I think this issue has been raised a lot, and I know at the moment, Gary Craig has kind of been brought back into this argument about how faster EFT is not and should not be associated with EFT. And I'd like to add to that my opinion, which is that it technically cannot be a development of something that Robert Smith doesn't understand. You can't improve something that you don't get. If you choose to edit out the concept of the pumpkin, or in this case, the energy system, a number of things can occur. Well, one is that people who are coming along think they're going to get one thing and they end up getting something else. Okay, so there's an ethical argument there about what you're actually promoting. Even if you said, actually, I've changed the name now, if you're pitching it to people who have come from an awareness and understanding or an interest in emotional freedom techniques, which is an energy and meridian therapy, a tapping therapy, and then you then edit out that part of it, I think you need to be very careful about what happens when you misunderstand something to such an extent. Those of us that understand how the energy system works understand that by tapping and tuning in, by tapping the meridian system, we bring up information. We access and locate energetically stored information. Now, we get into a whole other argument about whether the memory and the way we make sense of the world is in our brain or is in the field. And that's a whole other argument, which I mentioned to Robert, and he was afraid to talk about, is all I can say. Okay. So what I started to notice was that Robert kind of had this narrow bandwidth by which he understands things. And this is where I think we start to get an issue. So Robert goes to great lengths to not talk about energy and to not talk about the meridian system in a way that talks about it as an energetic system. He has tried, so Robert kind of understands things in my view, Robert understands things in a very logical and a very practical way. And for him, the energetic system doesn't fit in that logical, practical way. So he's tried to kind of logically and practically explain it away and come up with his own understanding, which he is now teaching to people, and in my opinion, incorrectly. Now, this was a personal trigger for me because one of my triggers was people being taught things wrong. I come from a teaching background, and for me, it is a trigger to see people being misled with incorrect information. So when I went away from the training, that was something that I worked on. And one of the earlier conclusions I came to when I worked on that was that my initial attempt was to try to help him, help Robert Smith to kind of change where he was getting it wrong. He wasn't interested. Okay. So secondly, I felt the need to fix it and tell everybody the truth, or the universally accepted and acknowledged truth. And that was invited by many people, and on the during the training, people were pursuing me to ask my opinion, and even people closest to Robert in the FasterEFT community encouraged me to challenge him. I have to point that out also, which was quite interesting. But my conclusion was that basically it will be what it will be. I don't believe that FasterEFT will grow any bigger than a certain size because of this inability to be in alignment with general other acceptable or accepted practices. Okay, so my opinion is that FasterEFT, even though we know it is called Faster Emotionally Focused Transformation, cannot be an improvement of a system that has been misunderstood and edited out. One of the dangers of this is that by tuning in, by using tapping on meridian points, people are inadvertently tuning into things, as well as misleading people who think they're coming for a certain type of therapy or learn a certain type of technique. The people that are not understanding the energetic meridian system and how that tunes into things, the same way as things like EMDR can bring up stuff, because people are not being properly trained in an understanding of the meridian system, they don't understand why certain things come flooding in or certain information suddenly becomes accessed by their clients. So that's one of the dangers that I think is arising by this particular misunderstanding. So I think in terms of being ethical, I think FasterEFT should address the fact that it is a misunderstanding of Gary Craig's EFT, and it has been, rather than improved, it has been edited and limited in its practice by a lack of understanding and a lack of awareness by Robert, and basically a fear to go there. As Robert said himself in the training, we don't go there, and I know that's a reference to a particular skit, a sketch, but Robert feels the need to make a joke about that because obviously he's afraid to be forced to explain something he feels he can't explain. Okay, so that's one issue. Therefore, I don't feel that FasterEFT can be a development of EFT. Okay, so what is it? Okay, now I do feel that Robert has worked really hard at putting together his manuals and his training systems, but mostly, basically, it is a series of practices or a series of concepts and practices based on NLP. And I do think Robert has quite a deep and clear understanding of a lot of the NLP techniques. And this is not to criticize Robert in his choice to basically choose what he believes in, choose what he wants to go with, and then present that to other people, because we all do that. He's not the only person to do that. We all make sense of what we can make sense of. We all look at how our experiences have been changed, what's helped us, and how we can share that with the world. And I do believe that that is what Robert is doing. The fact that he is operating from a very narrow bandwidth of understanding is what I think leads to some confusion. So, so just to clarify a couple of the techniques, and I wanted to do this because I wanted to make it clear that it isn't everything in FasterEFT that is a problem, nor is it some of these individual techniques if used correctly and if used properly. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some of these techniques, and I'm going to explain why they work and how they work. And then I want us to just look back at what I said about working with trauma and working with severe trauma and about safety issues. Okay, now before I do that, I just want to go through some of these comments just so that I can make sure I'm still addressing some of what people say. Some people saying that they've lost me and then I'm back. Sorry if people do keep losing me. Thank you for the nice comments. Against or for EFT or FasterEFT, I'll kind of hopefully when I summarize that, the person that wrote that, then I'll make it clear. Thank you. Somebody glad to hear me. Need to adjust the output device if they can't hear you. Thanks for that. Most people can hear me though, so I think it's the other end. But thanks for that advice. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these techniques. Now, this is by no means all of the techniques that FasterEFT includes, but these form some of the main techniques that people are using and are modeling from Robert. Okay, and I have to say that Robert does them very well, but we're going to talk about why they work sometimes for Robert or why they don't work for certain people, and why they don't seem to work for certain practitioners. Because what I'm not prepared to do is to make the sweeping statement that FasterEFT is bad for everybody and everybody that's doing it is bad. There are some exceptional practitioners, but I am going to try and differentiate between what I think makes a good practitioner of FasterEFT or other techniques, okay, because we get bad practitioners in other techniques too, and in EFT and other modalities. I'm going to try and outline where I think things go wrong. I'm sorry, just having a drink. Okay, so I believe that based on what I've heard Robert say and what I have seen him do, is that Robert believes that when we tap the points that he has chosen, it's supposed to be faster because you don't tap as many points and you're supposed to kind of get to the end of the process quicker. And the transformation is supposed to come quicker. Okay, but one of the things he talked about in the training that I was in was this whole ability of being the fastest or faster. Now, a pattern interrupt is when you access something that you think about, you represent in your memory, something that a memory that you're holding, and then you stop that connection. You actually interrupt your access to that thought or that memory. Now, pattern interrupt can be anything. Okay, it doesn't have to be meridian tapping. And now, when I refer to the tapping, I mean the tapping that Robert adopts, not understanding he's tapping the energetic system because he thinks he's tapping connections from the brain to certain organs. So he thinks he's doing a pattern interrupt between the message from the brain to the organs. Now, he may be doing that as a result of tapping into the energetic system, okay, but he thinks the purpose of the tapping is to interrupt the message from the brain to the organs, so that when I access a thought and then I tap, I stop my access to that memory and I stop my body responding to it. Okay, so a pattern interrupt, you can do it in any number of ways. I could poke someone in the eye when they're upset. That's a pattern interrupt. Okay. And when I was a kid, we used to say, oh, have you got a pain? Got a pain in your arm. If I stamp on your toe, that'll stop her thinking about the pain in your arm. Okay. That's a pattern interrupt. Okay. A pattern interrupt is a way to immediately, and it's supposed to be very quick and very specific, break your connection to something you have associated with. So the point is that you have an association, you become connected to, and you start feeling and associating with a past memory or with an experience. Okay, and I'll talk about association and disassociation in a moment. Okay, so the pattern interrupt is a way of taking my attention away from it. So Robert believes that when he taps, that's what he's doing, and that's how he's teaching it. But by doing that, there is a danger in that when we tap, we actually tune into something more. Okay, and again, because he doesn't understand the meridian system and the energetic system, he doesn't even entertain that this is a possibility. Okay, well, those of us that work with the meridian system and with the energetic system understand that when we begin to tap certain meridian points, we begin actually to access the information stored in our energetic system. Okay, all thoughts, memories, past experiences, pictures, all of those, what we call the internal representations of events, are all stored within our system. And when we tap, we begin to reassociate and bring those up. Okay. So one of the things that Robert does is he works on a pattern interrupt, and this in itself as a technique is a standard technique, and there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, but if I reference you back to what I said about working with trauma, and in particular severe trauma, unless you have a level of safety where somebody is ready to let go of a strategy for survival, then they're not going to let go of a strategy. So you have to be a very, very gifted, a very, very good practitioner with very good rapport with your client, that client is in a very safe place in order to allow you to facilitate a pattern interrupt that allows them to change a strategy. Okay. If you don't have that level of safety, if you don't have that level of trust and connectivity and rapport, you are more likely to cause a re-traumatize or to force an individual to adopt another strategy. So if the strategy they had isn't working because they're being forced away from it, people will tend to adopt the next strategy that is for survival. Okay, so this is where we start to see if somebody has been training in these techniques but has peripheral understanding and knowledge, is doing further research, is doing further study, and has natural rapport skills like some of the FasterEFT practitioners, then I believe that they can achieve good things with something that is solely a pattern interrupt. Okay. I believe Robert can achieve things with something that is considered to be solely a pattern interrupt, because with people's view of Robert, if people go to Robert and they have an adoration for Robert, then that gives a level of rapport. I mean, I'll talk a little bit later about types of rapport and kind of what I would call respectful rapport and empowering rapport later on. But I do believe that it is possible to get some results with something as simple as a pattern interrupt. It doesn't look like I've spelled that right now, look at it, but I think it is. Okay. Okay, so another technique that I've seen Robert use is a collapse anchor. Okay, now, again, when I explain this technique, I would like you to then to refer back to what I just said about working with people with severe trauma and working with people who need a level of safety. Unless there is a deep level of safety, of rapport, of connectivity, people who are being pushed towards collapsing or losing their safety strategy will be forced into adopting another safety strategy. Okay. And if you don't have a practitioner that is capable of understanding those levels of rapport or reading in a client that is what's happening, that somebody is actually not feeling safe, then you get the possibility for re-traumatization, because what you should be doing first is you should be establishing those levels of safety and rapport. So a collapse anchor works by, again, this is another technique where we need to associate with the event or with our representation of an event. So what we're holding in ourselves. So we need a level of association again. Now, the techniques that I'm developing and working on are actually working on ways in which we can work with severe trauma where we don't need to reassociate, but we know that the issue's there and we can address it in a number of other ways, safe ways. Okay, but both of these NLP techniques need you to connect and associate, and quite simply the way it works is you're lighting up your neurology to that issue. You're if you like, highlighting your neurological pathway to that problem in order that you then start to break it and stop it. So it's working on the concept that when you think about a problem, like a path well trod, you have a particular neurological highway to that stored information. And when that's, when you think about something a lot, you develop a habit around something, you create a path well trod. And so when we light up that path, there are ways in which you can confuse the brain into either breaking that path and taking you further away from being able to access that path, or by firing off another opposing emotion at the same time, so that the brain is confused and the brain tends to adopt the higher level one, which would be the happier, the better memory, the better thought. Robert does this very skillfully in a video with the lady who is talking about a traumatic experience. I believe it was a rape. And he has the machine with the fart button, and he presses the fart, and he embarrasses the lady, and they start to laugh. And then she reaches the point where she can't talk about the event because it's now become associated in her neurology with laughing at Robert and his farting. It's very skillful. But the reason he was able to do that was because he had a level of rapport with the lady in the first place. She was safe to go through that process, and she was safe to adopt that strategy. Now, I do talk later about the safety of ecology and what it means to go back into a different context and go back into our usual everyday life without preparing ourselves or preparing our clients for the ecology of the changes that we make, or the ecology of changing their strategies. Okay. So a collapse anchor is when we fire off one set of neurological pathways with another set of neurological pathways, i.e. I talk about something that's devastating and upset to me, and I get in, and it has to be, okay, it has to be a naturally occurring, genuine emotion in the opposite. Okay. So this is where the skill comes in. If you don't get that, the potential for disaster is enormous, because if we look at what creates safety, which is validation, which is respect, which is rapport, unless you have the deepest level of rapport and respect and trust from the person, when you collapse an anchor, you are more likely to offend somebody, to re-traumatize them, to isolate them, to frighten them, and to obviously compound the issue. So what is being highlighted for me here is the ability to connect and establish rapport with clients. Okay. So again, another technique, and basically I've got Robert's manual here in front of me. Most of the belief system and training system and structure of FasterEFT is based on the understanding of how we've made sense of the world, how we've represented it within ourselves, and then how we recall it and how we re-represent it in our daily life. Okay, so as I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with any of the techniques and the individual NLP techniques adopted. There are reasons why these techniques don't work for a large majority of the individuals using them, and it mostly comes down to rapport and safety, I think. Okay, so NLP, another technique is understanding when we represent somebody, when we store all of that information, when we have a trauma or a past event, we store everything, all of the senses, our sight, smell, taste, what we hear, what we feel, excuse me. We store all that information, and the submodalities are, if the submodalities are of sight, of our sight sense, are what shape I see, what color I see, the things that I see. So the submodalities of what I hear are the things that I hear, the tone, the rhythm, those sorts of things. Okay, and because I've stored them in a certain way, it's possible to play with those and thus change my relationship to the information I've stored. So that's one of the techniques that I've also seen. And just in the very, very recent video where Deirdre and Robert are on Irish Northern Ireland television, Robert plays with this very sweet guy who presenters submodalities of an issue that he's holding. Okay, again, nothing wrong with it. Okay, but the guy was open, the guy had rapport, the guy was willing to look at the situation, and the way I see it is he knew what he was getting into, which is, I don't think is the case for many of the people that have been taking the trainings, thinking they're getting EFT, emotional freedom techniques, who don't know what they're getting. Okay, so this is one of the safety issues. So people not knowing what they're getting, and then combined with people who don't quite understand what they're doing, and in terms of the energetic system, and tapping on people and associating them with information, and not quite having, and it's one thing to not have the skill, it's another thing to actually have a piece of the puzzle missing that might give you more skill to handle it. Because if you were taught, even at an early stage with EFT, to focus on the energy of the information and process the energy, you have a lot safer a technique than trying to be clever about what I would say NLP is a lot of mind games and a lot of I don't know, mind trickery in a way, because what you're doing is you're tricking the brain into seeing something different. Okay. So hypnosis. Okay. Robert is very, very good at hypnosis. And I want to differentiate here about his about the comments that have been about him deliberately hypnotizing followers and creating followers. Robert is just trying to share with people what he has to share in his own way. Whether you consider that to be limited or not, or whether you consider that to be ethical or not, I believe that Robert is doing his best to share something that he feels he has an understanding, and he's trying to teach and share that. Okay, I think that when we take things into isolation, when we take things out of context with other supporting information, we run the risk of destabilizing what it is that we have to share. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about what hypnosis is. Basically, hypnosis is the reassociation with an event, the ability to experience now either something that has happened or something that we autogenically create. We create in our mind, and our ability to associate with it as if it were real and it were happening now. You get it when you look on the telly and you see that nice cold glass with the drink in it and the bubbles going and the little droplets running down the outside of the glass, and you think, oh God, I could just drink that. Okay, that is a trance. That is you associating with your experience of that, and feeling it right there and then, and think, well, I'll just pop to the shop and go and buy myself a couple of drinks. It's used all the time. We do it all the time. I agree with Robert that we're constantly in and out of trance, and understanding how we do that is very, very useful. And a technique that Robert fundamentally bases what he does on is defractionization. So in order to explain defractionization, I'm going to explain what fractionization is. So when you're hypnotizing somebody, you're getting them into a relaxed state. You're actually taking them into probably like alpha brainwave, but into a more susceptible or a more suggestible brainwave state. And to do that, you can start to get somebody to relax, and you talk somebody into relaxing, and you help them to relax. But as they do that, if you take that away, so let's say you're saying, and you're relaxing more, you feel your shoulders relaxing, and as I count from 1 to 10, you'll feel your body relaxing more, and then you get to sort of 8, 9, 10, and then you ask them to open their eyes and come back a minute, and people don't want to do that, because if somebody's relaxing, they don't want to come out of that relaxation. So what happens is, if you take it away a little bit and then you give it back to them, people go, oh, thank you, and they go deeper. So you get somebody to a certain level of relaxation, and then you just take it away just a little bit and give it back. And when you give it back, they go that level deeper. And then you take them a little bit deeper again, and then you take it away again and you give it back. And this is called fractionization. This is how to get somebody into a deeper trance, because the more you take it away and give it back, the more somebody goes into trance. Now, by its nature, this happens on a FasterEFT and on an EFT training. Because if you start to associate somebody, you start to get somebody to relax and to go into an association with something, or into a relaxed state, into an alpha brainwave state, and then you call somebody back out to teach them a bit more and then get them to go back again. over a period of time, you are actually getting people into deeper and deeper and deeper states of suggestibility, of hypnosis. Okay, it's just the nature of the beast. That is just what happens. The more we become relaxed and then we have to come out of it, the more when we get it back, the deeper we go. So this is something that I have witnessed, and this is why at the end of a training in EFT, and other techniques that take us into talking with the subconscious mind or into slightly hypnotic states, this is why we feel really spaced out at the end of it all, and we don't know whether we're coming or going, is because we've been in and out of a hypnotic state, deeper and deeper and deeper, until it is really hard to concentrate or remember what was going on. And we need some time to reflect on what's going on or what has been going on. And I'll talk a little bit about this when we talk about doing transformation work in trainings and testimonials in a little while. So if that's what fractionization is, the technique that Robert uses, and adapting mostly the pattern interrupt technique, because that's what Robert thinks the tapping is that he gets you to associate, or he trains people to get people to associate with the way that they have represented the problem, how they've stored that problem in their subconscious mind, and then he breaks that pattern. So what he's doing is the opposite to getting somebody deeper and deeper and deeper into a state. He is actually making it harder for them to reassociate with the issue. So this is why they use the metaphor with the tree and tearing it out by the roots, or this, experiencing it for the last time. The idea is that by addressing the fact that you are kind of witnessing this and experiencing it and feeling it for the last time, and then breaking your connection with it, and then going back and trying to find it and breaking your connection again, and then going back and trying to find it and breaking the connection again, to the point where you cannot find it again. Okay. Now, I've got no reason to think that this can certainly work for some people. But again, I'll draw your attention to the fact that unless you are safe, unless you are ready to let go of a strategy and adopt a higher strategy, you will be forced into adopting a new strategy that is just a replacement for something that was keeping you safe before. Okay. There is a sense of euphoria doing this with a group of people, a sense of euphoria if we've been in and out of a hypnotic state. This is why I think people do get significant changes in certain situations, in trainings, not just FasterEFT, but other trainings too. Okay. But what we have to do is we have to look at the ecology of that change on a bigger scale. Okay. So that's just an outline of some of the techniques that I've seen being used. In themselves, there's nothing wrong with them. The problem occurs when we start to use them with people in a way where we are not in tune or in alignment with somebody's personal needs and personal needs for safety. Okay. Now, there are reasons that is happening, and I'm going to look at the NLP presuppositions, or some of the presuppositions that have been adopted by Robert and FasterEFT. Okay. So I have seen, so I'm just looking at the questions again. Okay. Okay, thank you. Just some nice comments. That's good. Okay. So again, this is not really to get at Robert, because we all do this. We all look at a bunch of information and we say, well, I get that and I take that on board, and I don't get that. So, I don't see how that fits. But Robert is clearly a very logical person and needs to pick up on logical things. And if something doesn't make sense to him, he's kind of just put it to one side. Now, the problem with that is that in NLP in particular, there are quite a lot of presuppositions, and they kind of all go together. And what I mean by a presupposition is, for example, I'm talking to you about my opinion on FasterEFT. So I'm presupposing, I am making the assumption that you're here to listen to my opinion. Okay, it means I'm assuming something in order for me to act. So in NLP, for the structure of some of the NLP techniques to work, there is a presupposing of certain factors that make it possible for these techniques to work. So some of the NLP presuppositions that I have seen at play, let's say, or seen adopted in FasterEFT, in particular, are you are in charge of your mind and therefore your results. So, and this is one of the key aspects of the belief system, that you are the person making this reality. Okay. Now, I think it's on the next slide. I've actually quoted the Buddha on this. This is by no means a new thing. Okay. It is quoted in many deep philosophical by many philosophical gurus and specialists, in that what we perceive is the world that we create. What we actually think is what we see and what we have in our life. Okay. Robert seems to have kind of latched on to this particular thing, and for me, it is supported by a number of other things that don't seem to be taught with as much vigor, let's say, as some of the ones that build the main structure of the belief system. I absolutely believe that what Robert teaches about the fact that we are making our own world. Yes, we are recreating our own memories and accessing our memories, and the way he puts it is we're doing something very well. If you're creating guilt or creating sorrow or creating whatever it is, then you're doing something very well. But there's a couple of other things that need to be thought about or need to be put into that equation when we observe that with other people. There is also an addressing of the map is not the territory, i.e. that what I'm representing isn't necessarily the whole truth. Okay, it is just a part of the truth that I stored, and in fact, when I look at it, it changes every time I look at it, and I also accept that too. But the ones that seem to be kind of either disregarded or left out are, in particular, the respect for the other person's model of the world. Now, what seems to be happening with the FasterEFT adoption of the presuppositions of NLP is that once I get that one there, that we, with our thoughts, we make the world, that you're kind of just making your reality with your thoughts, and you're doing that very well. You're doing it all in your mind. There is an arrogance that I can see that and you can't, and I'm going to sort that out. Now, the second we start to believe that our map of the world is better than the person's map of the world that we're dealing with is the second we can never have rapport with them. Because if we are arrogant enough to think that we know better about this person, then this person is never going to be fully empowered to make their own changes. Okay, so with the work that I've been doing in Bosnia, I know that they're representing that they are reliving a past event. But I'm also aware that this is not just in their mind, it is in their physiology. And it's not just their mind telling their physiology, because their physiology is part of the body-mind connection. So it's equal in its representation. So people have got a built-in survival mechanism in their physiology as well as their emotional and psychological state. If I think I know better than them, I'm run the risk of never really listening to the way that they have been dealing with their situation and empowering them to change the way they feel. So I can't be in rapport with people if I think I'm better than them, if I think I know better than them, if I think I've got the answer to their problem, if I think I'm going to force them to stop doing what they're doing. Okay, so the level of arrogance that puts me in a position to disregard or not respect the other person's model of the world immediately puts that person in danger of not being safe and of therefore not being able to address, change, or release their traumatic experiences and change the way in which they adopt newer, higher level strategies. Okay. So everybody is doing the best that they can with the resources that you have. Now, interestingly, I believe that this is kind of somewhat comes across in the FasterEFT training, but it kind of, I don't think it's fully understood. And I think some people are kind of saying these things and they don't fully understand what that means. Because again, if there is a level of arrogance that I know better than you and that I'm going to tell you how to fix your problem, in that I know it's all in your head and I'm just going to kind of almost bully you or trick you out of doing that, then I'm not really trusting that this person has all the resources and are doing the best that they can and will, when they are ready, adopt another, and when they're safe enough to adopt another strategy. Okay. Another presupposition is that all procedures should increase wholeness. And I think if we are looking to take somebody's strategy away without recognizing its totality of their whole system and their whole belief system, then again, we are completely misunderstanding the process by which we are trying to help somebody to improve their quality of life. So I may set out with the desire to help somebody to improve their quality of life. But when I'm making the decisions that I know what is an improvement to your quality of life, I've already lost my ability to help that person, because that person is the person who is in charge of their quality of life. And the other kind of the next ones go together is calibrating on behavior is key. Now, I have been following some of the experiences of the people that have been re-traumatized and some of the recordings, and I can say that there seems to be a whole lot of confusion about these broader principles and presuppositions of helping people, in that the ability to calibrate on people's behavior and the ability to actually listen to what is required and what is needed for the client seems to be non-existent in some sessions that I've listened to. Now, I don't want to make a sweeping statement that everybody doing FasterEFT is not striking rapport with their client and creating change, because I believe there's some very good practitioners and some people naturally able to use these techniques and to establish rapport. And I'm not suggesting that it's only FasterEFT that there may be problems in some of these areas. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look for where the gaps are or where I think things start to go awry. Okay. So if it's not possible for a client to connect and calibrate on behavior because they're already caught up in the idea that they know best, okay, so therefore they're not looking to calibrate on behavior or strike rapport with a client, then this is where I think there is a problem. So another presupposition is that resistance in a client is a sign of lack of rapport. So if you've got somebody who isn't changing or ready for change, it is because that client isn't safe to do so. Okay, so that there's a direct NLP presupposition that relates to what I was saying before about safety and about ability to change. Okay. Now, the meaning of communication is in the response you get. This is a really interesting one, and I'm going to carry this over into the next slide, okay? Because there's this interesting argument that goes on in, and I've heard trotted out from not just FasterEFT, but from people who've studied NLP and who get this idea that what people see is what they must be holding themselves. Okay. And if you look at the bottom of this slide, I've put feeling aggression, seeing aggression, or witnessing aggression. Okay. And I can sum it up quite sweetly in a little part of the conversation I had with Robert a little while ago when he asked about this webinar. So I suggested to Robert that one of the problems was that some people might see his techniques as aggressive. So Robert wrote back and said, I don't understand what you mean aggressive. I don't think I'm aggressive. And then he did this thing which I've seen not just FasterEFT people do, but NLP people do in general, which is flip it and say, well, that must be something that you're feeling. So if you're seeing aggression, then you must be, that's something you're feeling. Okay. Now, to a point, as I've put the Buddhist quote there, we are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world. Yes, I can say to an extent that if I go around feeling aggressive, I am going to perceive aggression, and I am going to possibly instigate it, and I'm going to have, let's say, aggressive experiences. Okay, that doesn't mean that every time I see aggression, it is from within me. So if I see, for example, a man punch his wife in the face, okay, that's not an aggressive thing I see because I'm holding aggression in me. Okay, it's not because I perceive aggression in my world, it's because I'm attracting aggression or because I am making that aggression with my perception. It is the ability to witness what aggressive behavior is. So, so it is true that we can perceive things that we're feeling. I don't have a problem with that. Okay, but when people have heard that and have adopted that, it is used very, very often as a way of getting out of responsibility for issues that get arisen. So when I said to Robert, I think some people see your approach as slightly aggressive, uh, because Robert didn't have a response for that, he adopted the default response, which is common in a number of people, of well, that's just what you see. Okay. Now, to me, this shows a lack of personal reflection and personal development, and a lack of ability to able to empathize and reflect on what is going on around us, and what it is that we may need to draw attention to. Okay, so it's like a 5-year-old saying, you're stupid, and the other 5-year-old who doesn't have a comeback going, well, you're stupid. Okay, it's not a valid argument. It's not a valid response when someone suggests something to say, no, well, no, that's your problem. That is. Okay, now I have a problem with this outside of FasterEFT, in the general NLP world, of people misunderstanding what this means about how what we perceive makes our world. Okay, it is a really good way to flip our inability to respond or to process or to reflect on our own behavior. So I feel that when Robert doesn't know how to respond, this is something that he does, like I've seen other people do. Now, the trouble is that, like we all do, we model our mentors. Okay, so people who are attracted to Robert are attracted for a certain reason. They like his sense of humor, and he is very charismatic, so they like his charisma, and they gravitate towards him. They like that he gives away free help and free information, and there's lots of reasons to listen to Robert. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with those things. But what happens is that we do model our mentors, and if we are using Robert as our sole kind of path of information, and we start to model that mentor, so we model Robert, we end up actually being in a very limited point of view. Okay, so I think, like everybody, Robert can distort, delete, and generalize information, and because, as I said before, I think Robert is very practical. It has to be very logical. It has to make sense. Okay, it has to be kind of almost tangibly make sense. And so if there's something that doesn't make sense, or Robert doesn't get, or he can't explain it, he just kind of leaves it out. And so if you're only using that one path of information, you run the risk of modeling something without fully understanding why Robert is behaving the way that he does. And like all of us, Robert is doing his best in the world, and Robert is modeling, is behaving in a way that protects himself, protects his own interest, and he's attempting to share what he has learned and discovered with people as best he can. But I feel, like I said before, he has a kind of narrow bandwidth of understanding of certain concepts, and this is where if people start to model Robert because they see his coolness or calmness or slight aloofness, or inability, or his lack of certain type of responses as as having done the work, I actually don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it is a way of protecting himself, again, like we all do. But obviously, Robert's there on a pedestal, so this is why we're discussing it. People tend to model Robert without really understanding why he's behaving the way that he does. Okay, and this is where I think there's the crossover between Robert and his behavior and his personality and the belief system and structure of FasterEFT. So this is why it's a bit complicated to separate the two out. Okay. Now, I want to be really careful about, addressing Robert as a personality and talking about him as an individual, because we all do these things. We all have this capability of being able to protect ourselves with certain behaviors. The reason I'm addressing it is that if people are modeling this and this is put up as a model to follow, I feel that an issue is arising with people who are not understanding that behavior and who are not able, therefore, to act outside of that, or to think on their feet, or to be adaptable within a given situation. Okay, so if we look at what makes a good practitioner or therapist, it's somebody that is able to meet the needs of a client and adapt to the client's needs, and adapt to, and actually this is another presupposition about being adaptable. Okay, but I couldn't type them all up. So if we look at what is going wrong, or where do the dangers occur with FasterEFT, okay, I think some people get results by chance without knowing why they get results. And I'm going to mention two sort of issues that have been in the forefront, and thanks to Diana for sort of highlighting these and sharing these. I listened to the recording of Marilyn, and I'm sorry I don't know the practitioner's name. That's probably a good thing. Okay, now I believe that practitioner was doing exactly what she was taught in this particular recording. I believe that practitioner was true to the belief system of FasterEFT. She thoroughly believed and understood, and I'm not saying incorrectly, but correctly, that this person was, representing this reality. Was creating this representation. However, what the practitioner wasn't able to do was in any way calibrate with the client, create a level of safety for the client, and actually even listen to the client and actually meet the client where they were, and actually work safely with that client. There was a complete lack of empathy, lack of rapport, and lack of ability to calibrate with the client. And I think that's because she wasn't taught how to do that, or even wasn't taught that that was important. And because so long as people understand that, the map is not the territory, i.e. what people think is not the reality, and that they've made it up, and that we can change that, and we can change the way they represent it, then they're kind of taught to focus on that. And you could hear in the language of this practitioner that that was the belief system she had, and she very much believed that her understanding of the situation was the authority, and that she knew the client's situation better than the client. And whereas although this practitioner was definitely following the belief system of FasterEFT, that session was a complete train wreck. It was horrific to listen to the point where the clearly traumatized client was even, and with the deepest respect to this lady, was even actually explaining herself that she was being traumatized. She was in a freeze response, and she even used the words "I'm frozen," and the practitioner was totally and utterly incapable of hearing what this person said, because she was so caught up in her own technique and her own method and what she'd been trained, that she was just not able to connect with the client. Okay. So this is one of the things that I think, in terms of ethics, is where things are going slightly awry. Okay, it's not that any of the techniques that person was even using were wrong. It was her priorities were completely and utterly wrong. Her priorities were in sticking to the belief system that she had, that she felt was better than the belief system of the client, and that she wasn't acting on behalf of the client. Okay, which obviously, when you're working with somebody with severe trauma, this is not something that that you can do. Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's going to make me emotional now. Thank you for that. So just to share that I've had a message from the lady that I'm just referring to, and thank you for that. Okay. This, I mean, I'm very, very grateful that you were able to share that, and that has been shared, because it is one of the main highlights, I think, to one of the systemic problems in FasterEFT. So if we take each of the individual techniques in themselves, there's nothing wrong. It's when we start to look at what is the purpose of using them, or should I say, what is the priority of using them, that's when we get a lack of understanding of the needs of the client. Okay, so so another example of this is looking at Solomon's situation, and just to put these two together. Okay, the fact that Marilyn was made to feel that it was her fault, that she wasn't letting go of this, and she was holding on to this, and she was doing this herself, to me is is a fundamental lack of respect for somebody who is really there to work on their problem, and there to try to change their problem, and to understand their issue, and to release their trauma, and to adopt a higher, more serving way of being, and to increase, to improve their quality of life. So if you go ploughing in and disrespecting that, there is no way on this earth you are going to create a level of safety and rapport that actually creates a safe space for somebody to change. It's not going to happen. Okay. So by the same token, if you then blame that person for not changing, okay, and this is, again, now we come on to Solomon, and we say, well, yes, I was in Solomon's training. I was there when Solomon had his great revelation and his healing, and he was slightly euphoric, and I was witness to that. Okay. Now, Solomon's talked quite a lot about this situation, and a lot about how he felt afterwards. Okay, there was rapport, and as Solomon said himself, there was a lot of energy and a lot of investment in him, having some success with the techniques. But of course, as I've explained, we get this fractionization effect where we get more and more slightly hypnotized, and also when somebody, as I've said, tries to take away a strategy, we end up either adopting another one, or we just adopt what we can at the time. And actually, I saw Marilyn do this as well. We become very compliant. Okay, if I have a strategy and you're trying to take it away from me and I'm not safe, I then end up saying or doing anything that it takes to get me through this experience. Okay, and I kind of witnessed that in both of these experiences. It was very, very clear that the more traumatized Marilyn got, the more she started to adopt this compliant mode, where we just got to get through it. Okay, so we shut down, we become disassociated, and we just kind of agree to anything, because that's my best survival mechanism. Okay, now in the case of Solomon, he went through the experience, and he was kind of on a high, and he was, everyone was applauding him, everyone thought he was wonderful, and they saw a change in him, and he did have a shift, it's, to be fair, and so he was invited to talk about it, and he was pretty euphoric at the situation, and he did share how he felt. Now he was very excited to share that initially, but on his return home, he recognized that there was a bit more to it than that. And, this is where we talk about ecology for change. There are lots of things to think about in terms of changing my strategies that keep me safe. If I actually end up giving up a strategy in one situation, but then I go back to my normal everyday life, and it actually hasn't been safe for me to give it up, then I'm going to either readopt it, or I'm going to adopt another strategy. Okay. To suggest that this is the fault of the individual, again, is a misunderstanding of the inadequate work that has been done. There is an argument in many circles that, you know, it takes a split second to kind of to make a strategy or to have a trauma. Why shouldn't it take the same amount of time to release it? Okay. And the reason that can't be the case, on rare occasions it can, but the reason it generally isn't the case is because once we've adopted an understanding or a strategy, we build a lot more on top of it, because we build structures around it, and it propagates into other areas of our life, and we generalize into other areas of our life. So it's not as simple as a quick turnaround, because we actually create more safety mechanisms using that information. Okay, so so after the event, it was clear that there was no awareness in the change technique for the ecology of that change. How do I, you know, sometimes it can just be, who am I without this situation, and what else do I need? But you know, good change and good supported change in trauma work bears in mind the need for the safety of ecology, the safety of what happens after that event. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to draw attention to it's not every individual, and it's not every practitioner, but if I were to look at a more generalized reason why I think this system isn't working, it is because there is too much focus on a particular aspect of how the mind works without any deeper understanding and therefore teaching about what safe change is, what rapport is, and therefore the people that are highly traumatized need validation, they need connection, they need respect, they need safety in order to be able to be in a position to change. And in fact, that goes for anybody, but obviously in particular people with severe trauma. Okay. So there is an issue of rapport, there is an issue of people confusing these certain techniques with the ability to actually facilitate change, because you can't force somebody to change. Okay. By chance, you may have somebody that is there really ready and ripe and really trusting and able to change, and then you may get results. But to my mind, if you don't know why you're getting changes, or therefore why you're not getting changes, and you can actually, you know, put somebody like Marilyn or other people, and I do appreciate there are many other people, through this kind of experience without understanding why you're not being successful, or why you're causing upset or causing confusion and re-traumatizing people, then that is a fundamental issue to be addressed. Okay, and that is not just a technical issue. I think it's an ethical issue. Okay, so there's a big issue around rapport, I think. Okay, so I just wanted to look at, and I appreciate the time. So I'm just looking at a few messages. Somebody keeps getting cut off. Sorry about that. Somebody can't hear me. Sorry about that. So sorry that people are getting. Okay, most people are okay. Thank you for the reminder from my husband, who's actually online by himself downstairs. Yes, I know it's coming up to 9 o'clock. Oh, no, it's 9:20. Okay, so I am reaching towards a summary. Okay. Behavioral principles. Okay. I believe we're all doing our best. I believe Robert Smith is doing his best. But I believe that he has difficulty with change. He has difficulty with adopting broader understandings of things outside what he has been able to make sense of. And that means that he adopts strategies himself and ways of dealing with that. But we all do that. Okay. We all have protective strategies, and we all have ways in which we go out into the world and we function in the world. And you know, we adopt these strategies in order to keep us safe. Okay. Now I'm a specialist in German medicine and meta medicine, and my area of specialism is in the psychological behaviors. I've heard some of these names. Robert's been called certain things. He's been people have suggested he has certain personality traits. I'm going to just very quickly suggest that each of these 4 different types we call constellations, because in a brainwave CT scan you can see a pattern in the brain that suggests this type of behavior. Okay. I'm not subscribing them to Robert Smith. I am suggesting that we could all look at these as our own behaviors, and we could all look at them as strategies for protection and strategies for ways in which, when certain things are in place, we either do or don't behave in certain ways. Okay. So people have been using the expression megalomania, and it is a certain type of behavior that we adopt in order to protect ourselves. If I feel that I'm not good enough, or if I feel that I can't compete with other people, I adopt a strategy whereby I see myself as good, or as better than other people, or as somebody that can fix other people. Now, I'm suggesting people on all sides of this look at how they see this in themselves. Okay. If this is the case, if people are immovable in their personal perception of you need me to fix this, I need to be the person that helps other people can't help themselves. Okay. I need to be the best, the fastest, the quickest, the strongest. This is usually because this way of being gets us out into the world and gets us to actually kind of continue to function in the world. It can be more obvious by people who need to be faster and need to be better. It can be less obvious by people who need to adopt a certain role as a savior for other people. Okay, so this plays out in people's lives by feeling that, or should I say, shielding themselves by feeling that they are the person that is needed to help other people. Okay, emotional detachment protects us from being hurt by what other people think. It comes into play when I care too much what other people think, and it actually forces me to protect myself from the way I respond, and I cease to be able to kind of be upset by what other people say about me or feel about me. Um, and each of these have varying degrees of severity depending on individuals and depending on their needs. Okay, but one way that I protect myself from what other people think and feel about me is I don't empathize or connect with people very easily, and it's a self-protection mechanism. Okay, so this is something that, again, different people do on varying levels, but it is a way of protecting ourselves. If I fear either somebody leaving or a confrontation in any way, I can develop what's called a flying constellation. That means that I don't think I've got a problem, you've got the problem. But again, it's another strategy based on a belief system, and our belief systems are usually structured on events that have happened to us, past experiences, past events, past traumas. Okay, but if I have issues around fearing people will leave me or confrontation, then I tend to adopt the safe position of basically outside of the position, and I don't tend to see that I have a problem. Okay. Aggressive constellation, and this is one of my specialist areas, having worked on this quite a lot, is if I feel that I am not being validated or listened to, one of the ways in which I can respond is to become it's more than assertive, it's outwardly aggressive. So I assert myself, but depending on the severity of how I feel I've not been validated, or I'm not getting my position clear, or I'm not being listened to, then I can become more aggressive. Okay. Now, what I want us to do is to look at if we can see these behaviors as strategies for survival. Okay. I think we need to stop getting personal about how people are responding and behaving, and look at what needs to happen in order to be able to affect change. We need to work out what is it we're trying to do. So if we're looking at whether FasterEFT has issues working with trauma, we need to understand what trauma and safety is, which we've talked about. We need to understand, I think, that if people think they're getting EFT and they're not getting EFT, they're getting FasterEFT, how that is creating a lack of safety for people, and then how adopting NLP without fully understanding it is also causing some confusion and lack of responsibility or lack of rapport. And also when we kind of disregard things, how we're getting um, confusion when we model people who kind of miss bits out, let's say. So what I think it leads to is a superficial understanding of techniques, and therefore there's the lack of the ability to work safely with severely traumatized people. Okay, so that's my kind of general conclusion. I'm just going to come back and reiterate the issues that I have about making personal comments is I've addressed now what I think is the confusion between Robert's personal ability and how that ties in with the FasterEFT system. I don't think Robert is out to trick or to hurt people, but I think he is adopting strategies for protection, the same as everybody does. And when people are pushed into a corner, they come out fighting, and we're seeing that on this very polarized argument. I don't know how long that's going to last, and I don't know. I just have concerns about the effects that that's having, but I can understand why. Is my point. I think we need to bring it back down and distill it back down to a practical appraisal of why FasterEFT isn't working in certain instances, what it is about it that isn't working, so that we keep the personal complaints out, and we certainly don't air them publicly. And I certainly don't think that Gary Craig should be getting involved in personal comments. He should decide what his argument is, and I think his argument is mostly in the territorial aspect of the fact that he has established a brand that is being affected by FasterEFT, and I think he has a valid point based on what I've said about FasterEFT not being a development of EFT. But I think we need to stay specific, and I believe that people who have had traumas and people who have had serious issues with FasterEFT are looked after and have their feelings and their emotions and their issues de-escalated, rather than whipping up a kind of storm or frenzy, so that we get this big argument running online. I think people need to be looked after. I think we need to be very careful of the ethics of how people are used in making arguments for and against certain arguments, and I think that we need to be very careful to decide what is our argument, what is the point we're trying to make. So that kind of brings me to sort of to start to conclude is the comments about the Church of Robert Smith, the comments about FasterEFT business model. If you don't want to be involved in that, don't be involved in it. I do agree that if you got kind of tricked into going to it because you thought you were going for EFT, that should be addressed. But I don't think it's our place to comment on the people who choose to follow Robert. But what I do think needs to be addressed is the way in which the people who choose to follow Robert follow a very narrow bandwidth of information and a very slightly personal view of specific information and a very narrow understanding of certain information. My personal advice, and it has been since I took the training, is that if you want to understand FasterEFT, as it's called at the moment, then you should go and train in EFT, emotional freedom techniques, and you should go and train in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and you should put it together in your own belief system and see how it works together. That's my opinion. If you want to follow Robert Smith and model Robert Smith, that's also entirely up to you, but be aware that you are following one person's view of something, and that whether you're aware of it or not, you are following somebody who has taken certain aspects and kind of deleted out other things that don't make sense to him, that I believe make the practices that you are using in FasterEFT more ethical and more sound and more safe. Okay, so again, in themselves, that's not the techniques. I think there is room for addressing where those gaps are. But I think we need to decide what is it we're trying to achieve. Are we looking for the downfall of EFT or FasterEFT, or are we looking to improve it? I've put Arose by any other name. I think it's time that Robert trusted the people that do see things a little bit more clearly, that do see the bigger picture a little bit, and are able to kind of assess things slightly more broadly. And let's face it, I think Fast EFT has burnt its boats with any kind of relationship it had with Gary Craig anyway. I can't see any gain in sticking heels in and sticking to the name of Fast EFT, especially when it is a misunderstanding and a misinterpretation of a meridian tapping technique, and it is being incorrectly taught anyway. I think there is room for ethical standards and a grievance procedure. Whether Fast EFT feels attacked or not, it doesn't change the fact that there are genuine grievances and there are genuine people who have been traumatized. And, it is people like Diana not being listened to and not being validated and not being appreciated when she fed back this information at the beginning that has led to the escalation in the response. I think it's time now to stop sort of fighting from a corner and look at what is it that people in FasterEFT want to achieve. If there really is an ethical standards being put in place, then it is time to address and create a grievance procedure for those people who have a grievance. But at the same time, on the other side, there needs to be a recognition, if that's going to be the case, of what is it that what are the demands, if you like, what is it that you want to actually achieve, and then stick to that rather than muddy the whole thing with other more personal issues or other issues of people not liking business practice or personally disliking Robert. Okay. And I think there should be the support for those that need it. I have heard, I've been doing a bit of research. I do believe that the people who have grievances are being supported and helped, which I'm very glad to hear. So really, I just want to invite you to ask what's the bigger picture and what is everybody's personal kind of part in this, really. If we come back to what I was saying, I think needs to be seen is I'm looking for transparency, for ethical practice and for validation and acknowledgement that there is an issue and therefore that it can be addressed, and that people all round take responsibility for their part in the way the situation is at the moment and to be clear on what they want out of it, and that if a grievance procedure is put in place, that a third party, and I'm not volunteering, I make that very clear, a third party with experience needs to be in place for that grievance procedure, okay, for a whole host of reasons, okay, not least the safety of the people involved, and not least the protection of power parties all round. There needs to be an agreement, and there needs to be a proper grievance procedure, okay. So I've been looking at comments and questions and feedback, and I really appreciate some of the comments that I've had. As I said at the beginning, this was not designed to attack anybody, nor was it designed to fight anybody's corner. My personal interest in doing this is because I don't want this to escalate more and more into something that causes problems for us, for the people who are trying to work with trauma and are trying to do good work by things getting out of hand. At the same time, although I made a decision myself to step away from FasterEFT and to not recommend it for all of the reasons I've now explained, I appreciate that I decided, well, what will be, and it will be what it is, but that at that time I didn't realize there were particular individuals who had had such bad experiences, and I'm glad that there is support in place for those people. But I think now we need to start to decide, rather than the public situation going on as it is, and just kind of continuing the argument, we start to look at, or the people involved start to look at, what they actually want to achieve. Okay, if you've got any more comments or questions, I'll go through them now. I appreciate we've come to the end of the time, and it's been 2 hours and 5 minutes. you are very welcome to message me and email me following this if you've got anything to add or to say or any questions. And this will be shared publicly. There is, I've deliberately done this because I want to try to look at the technical aspects of where I think things are going wrong and look at the possible outcomes where we can not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some good things about these techniques, but I think there are some fundamental problems that could be addressed if the right people looked at it in the right way and were able to sort of work towards improvements. I don't know whether that's possible. I don't know how that's possible, but I'm hoping that it is. So, with the greatest respect to all people involved, and especially to the people that have allowed their stories to be publicly aired, I'm very grateful. If there is anybody that is listening that has had problems and that hasn't had the help that they need, then please contact me, and I'll put you in touch with the people that are helping. And if you have any questions, then you can, like I said, you can contact me via Facebook or at sam@intoalignment.com, and I will get back to you privately. So I'm just going to flick through. I appreciate people have to go. So thank you for your lovely comments. Oh gosh, there's a lot more. Someone else says thank you. Someone else says thank you. Someone else says thank you. So that's nice. And I really appreciate the comments. That's good. Thank you very much. Good. Somebody said that they've learned a lot. Somebody hijacked the questions box. Okay. I'm wondering if you're working with FasterEFT in your practice. So someone's asking me if I work with FasterEFT in my practice. No, I don't. But only because I understand outside of FasterEFT. The way I see FasterEFT, it is more like Robert Smith's belief system. He's taken certain bits of NLP and disregarded the energetic system because he can't relate to it, he can't explain it. So as an NLP master and hypnotherapist, I do my understanding when working with clients is based on the broader understanding of NLP. So I do work with that understanding, and that like my belief system includes some of the NLP, and I work with an understanding of hypnotherapy in my work. That's why I suggest that people who want to make the best sense of FasterEFT, as it's called at the moment, actually go and study EFT as an energetic system and why that works, and go and study NLP and hypnotherapy independently so that you can make your own mind up. So I work with NLP and hypnotherapy and EFT as an energetic system. To me, that is not the limited bandwidth of FasterEFT. Okay, to me, FasterEFT is Robert trying to make sense of those things, and in doing so, kind of editing some things out. He's very good at some things, but I don't use any of those techniques. My priority is working safely with my clients, and I have techniques that I've developed that do that in particular, especially with the work that I've been doing with Caroline in Bosnia and with people with very severe trauma. Okay. Do memories vanish with FasterEFT, EFT, etc.? Do the memories get buried or the connections of the memories disrupted? I think what we're looking for is when we store information in an event, we store all of the things we see, hear, and smell and feel at the same time, and everything that's in our external world and our internal world. And it's like taking a snapshot of the event. Now that snapshot is taken at a heightened state, and it's not a complete picture, if you like, of the full extent of the situation. And what NLP techniques do is they try to change your relationship with being able to access that information. So it's not necessarily a case of the memory being buried. What needs to be assessed, if you like, as to whether something's successfully done or not is whether someone's relationship to something does change. I work energetically a lot with people, so what I'm doing is I'm processing information energetically. It is true that you can, with some of these techniques, change someone's relationship to how they access information, how they represent that information in the memory and how they access it. Okay. I don't think we should go in and try to change memories. What I do when I work is I help somebody evolve the memory by releasing the stuck trauma, by releasing, animals in the wild release trauma, and they do it through the body. They do it somatically. They do it often by shaking and releasing the information and the freeze response. Okay, now we don't do that as humans only because we've learned not to do it. So if you can help somebody to release the freeze, they can start to develop a new awareness and a new understanding of the event, and they learn that the event's not happening now. So there are lots of ways to do that. Okay, so again, I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong. The way that we recall information is based on our level of safety. And if I have a strategy that I need to recall because I'm not safe, I constantly access it, and my body doesn't know the difference between what is a past event and what is a real event, because if it's a constant threat to me, my body's responding like it's a current event. So a lot of the different techniques that we use are looking at how do we teach the body and mind that this event isn't happening right now. Okay, now some techniques do it by associating you with the event that happened and then trying to teach you that it's not happening now. And I'm saying really that that's not necessary. We don't have to reconnect with the issue. We don't have to reassociate or re-experience that to work with that memory. There are other ways that we can do it more safely. But even if you're going to connect somebody to a memory so that you can change their relationship to it, if the person isn't safe, all you will do is re-traumatize them, because you will trigger them into association, and they will not have the capacity to process that if they're not safe. So that's the big issue. The big issue is that if you're using a technique, and there are lots of them that reassociate you to a stored memory, then if you haven't created a level of safety and rapport to do that, then you will end up with re-traumatizing somebody. And that was really one of the points of EFT, emotional freedom techniques, spends a lot of time establishing that safety before, as it is, because it does associate you with some of those memories, emotions, thoughts, feelings in the body, and all of that information. But it's built to be safe. Okay. Now, in the long run, that is the only way to work on a systemic and in-depth level. So therefore, that's the fastest way. If you're working at a superficial level, you will get superficial results. And actually, it's not systemic, so therefore, it's not actually in the long run faster. Okay? So I hope that answers your question. Just checking if there's any more questions. No. Thank you for being the voice of reason. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think I've pretty much answered most things. Just lots of thanks. That's really nice. So, like I say, if you've got any questions, please just get in touch, and I'm more than happy. Okay. And I wish you a good evening, or wherever you are in the world, a good day, a good morning. I don't know what the time differences are, but wherever you are, I hope you have a good rest of the day. And I look forward to helping anybody that needs any help if anyone gets in touch. Okay, so thank you.